Out for your wallet. Starting with some good news here. Reports show inflation hit its lowest mark in 4 years last month, and grocery prices dropped slightly from March to April. Big part of that due to the price of eggs dropping more than 12%. Bacon, that's down 1%, and the price of tomatoes is down 1.1%. However, bread, lettuce, milk, coffee, even baby food still seeing some increases in price. Reports suggest the president's tariffs haven't yet impacted the price we pay, though, for many things. But the ups and downs have many of us wondering what will happen next and how it'll impact our bottom line. Reporter Michael Higdon spoke to a research economist in South Carolina and what he's looking at for the future and how the trucking industry is already seeing some trouble. It's tonight's cover story.
Charleston is a port city. In fact, we have the deepest harbor along the East Coast, allowing for the largest fully loaded container ships to call on port no matter the tide. But with the tariffs on imported goods, it has many wondering if we could be seeing the effects in our own backyard. What comes in must go out, a reason the trucking industry plays a vital role in the state's economy. Rick Todd, president and CEO of the South Carolina Trucking Association, says we're in a 2+ year worst ever freight and rate trough.
The rates really are tied to freight volumes. If you've got plenty of freight, our pricing power is pretty good. If there's limited amount of freight, then truckers are really scrambling trying to find something to haul, and so they're willing to take less to do it. And that means less profit. You do not want a low profit or a marginal trucking industry.
Todd says the silver lining, at least right now, is the East Coast is less impacted by these tariffs than the West Coast. I know it's changing almost daily at this point. Talk to us about what you guys are dealing with right now when it comes to tariffs in the industry.
We're not really dealing with it. We're watching, and it is creating intense uncertainty. There's nothing we can do about it other than just go about our normal business, which if you're intermodal import-export movements, you've been slow for a couple of weeks. And, you know, as the freight that did come in or rushed out in advance of the tariffs, once it flushes its way through, then there's not that much coming behind it. That's when people start to get worried, and we're in that middle zone right now.
But it's the uncertainty that has people worried.
If Liberation Day, April 2nd, was enforced as initially discussed, we would be in a recession, a full-blown recession. Some say even maybe in a stagflation period by summertime.
And obviously,
that's worst case scenario. Best case scenario is these agreements get worked out quickly. We suffer that little period there where the supply chain kind of froze temporarily. I'm not going to predict anything.
And that's why we talked with the expert, research economist Joey Von Nessen from the University of South Carolina. He explains the pros and cons of tariffs, which are essentially a tax on you.
The costs typically appear first in terms of the higher prices that are passed along to consumers. But we can see benefits, but those typically arrive later, and perhaps several years later, because the benefits derive from additional investments in the U.S. in different regions throughout the country. That takes a long period of time because companies have to make those investment decisions and they have to actually build a facility. And so that is a years-long process in many cases.
One thing he and other economists are keeping an eye on is a possible recession.
The main factor to look for is inflation. That's the single variable, if you were going to pick one, that we need to be tracking to give us some insight into how much the economy may slow in the second half of the year. On average, we've seen prices rise about 25% since 2019, and wages have gone up by about 20%. Consumers are still trying to claw back that lost purchasing power, and if tariffs lead to increased prices this summer, then that's going to make it more challenging for consumers to get that purchasing power back, which increases the likelihood that they will pull back on spending and slow the economy and potentially move us towards a recession. Now, we don't know that that's going to happen, but that is the risk.
If you were to look at South Carolina's economy, what grade level would you give us right now and how we're dealing with this?
Overall, I would say the economy right now in South Carolina could be graded at a B+ level. Through the end of the first quarter, we still see a stable, thriving economy in the state and to a lesser extent at the national level as well. Consumer spending overall has held up well. In South Carolina, we continue to have historically low unemployment and very strong wage growth. So across most metrics, South Carolina's economy continues to perform well. And the question is, will that continue as we move into the summer months? And the key variable there is inflation. If inflation begins to tick back up between now and the summer, then that suggests that we may see a pullback in economic activity. If it doesn't, then we are actually well positioned as we move into the second half of the year.
A story we continue to follow. All right, turning back to the weather right now.